Joshua Woods from Local Insurance in Wichita, Kansas. How you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me here today.
So let me go here for about 60 seconds and kind of set this up. I want to tell the audience why I've got you on today.
Sure.
So I've been posting content on YouTube for about 6 years now, and the common thread of all the stuff that I've ever posted is trying to evolve insurance agents from one trick pony product pusher and evolve them into becoming a full service insurance agent where they sell all products across the board. I think that I really believe in my heart that's the best thing for the agent as well as the client. And so my whole teachings and everything I've ever put out from a philosophy standpoint has all been tailored around that. And I've known you for 7, 8 years now, and your story aligns with that so much. Not only have you went from starting in the industry where it was about a product and sell as much of it as you can to
hmm
evolving to where you can do fact finders and sell all life and health insurance products. But you've also taken a lot of different roads in order to get to where you're at right now, from working for a
The hard
captive
way.
agency to an independent side, retail side. You went from an agent mindset to an owner mindset. And so what I'd like to do today is kind of from a chronological standpoint, I'm going to kind of use you as a talking point in your story. And because I think it's going to resonate with so many of our listeners. Is that okay? Is that cool?
That's great. Yeah, absolutely.
So let's start with the beginning. Tell
Okay.
me where you first entered into the business at and a little bit about that.
Sure. So, it's funny. I think most, I'm going to call them lifer insurance agents, guys and gals that get in for life and really take the reins of it. We've all got a story. And my story starts I was a third generation aircraft worker. And I got told to be successful elsewhere. And sometimes that happens. And, honestly, it
That's
was,
triangulation where you got fired.
yeah, exactly.
All right, got it. I'm
Exactly.
gonna
Hey,
use that.
I was young. I was dumb. I think I was like 20, 21 at the time. And, big boy job wasn't even on the radar for me. So I probably didn't appreciate the job that I had in aircraft and the money I was making. But regardless, they told me sayonara and we parted ways. And I had a friend who I had met up downtown at the clubs, who I had originally worked with at MCI WorldCom here in Wichita, Kansas. And for people who don't know what MCI WorldCom was, or MCI, look it up. There was a big stock scandal with that company, but we basically sold local and long distance phone service over the phone. And I would say that job probably kind of helped me cut my teeth on the phones and really get an understanding and appreciation for sales and how to talk to people, overcome objections and things like that. By this time, I had, been let go from my aircraft job. And he said, "Hey, you should really come check out this insurance gig." And I said, okay, let's do it. So we set a day. He had a full days of appointments, and I think we drove maybe an hour and a half away or something that day. And he went and made like $2,000 in commission selling, I don't know, 6 policies. And I'm like, holy cow, what a rough day, right? Sign me up. So I ended up starting with as a licensed only agent with a agency out of Hutchinson, Kansas, which is not a bad thing, by the way. Again, great learning lesson there. But started with that agency and, was really focused on just selling Medicare supplements and maybe trying to do some packaging with life insurance.
What was the name? Was this Kansas Life?
It was Kansas Life.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Kansas Life out of Hutchinson,
They
Kansas.
were a quasi captive agency, right? Back in the
Yeah,
day.
they had a few independent agents that the agency owner had, had there and kind of, I would say, touted as, here's what you can have if you make it, right? Here's what you can do if you become successful. But that was it. It was kind of, let's throw whatever we can on the wall, see what sticks type of mentality. Very little training there. Again, you did not own your book of business ever. And again, it not necessarily a bad thing, right? Everyone has to learn.
So what were you selling?
About the industry.
Were you just selling like Medicare products?
Yeah. So Medicare supplements,
Okay.
no Medicare Advantage, no prescription drug plans.
Was it?
Nobody was touching any of that, at least from what, I, as an agent was told.
And so was it over the phone?
No, we set appointments. So we would typically have 3 days in the field and 2 days in the office.
Call.
Right. Calling. Yep. Calling days in the office. And
you spend half the week setting appointments and half the week going out.
Well, so I told the MCI WorldCom piece because, again, for me, I'm really, and I've always been just good on the phones and kind of overcoming objection. So for me, I would typically spend a couple of hours each day to fill, a days of appointments. And, for the day that I was on the phones filling 2 days appointments, it might have been about 4 hours to do that, to fill, 16 appointments or something, 16, 18 appointments for 2 days.
So when my first real gig, when I was 23 years old, this is back in the, mid to late 90s, I went to work for a telemarketing company. And I tell you what, and the guy told me this, you learn to do this job, you'll be able to be in any sales job in the world. Because what we did is we called people that didn't know we were going to call them. And we would get them to give money to some type of a fundraising organization. So we're calling people that didn't know that they were going to get a phone call from us, getting them to give us money. We give them nothing in return, and they say thank you at the end and still mail a check afterwards. No face-to-face, all the tools you get. I mean, you learn to work the phones, and it makes this gig a lot easier, regardless of what your marketing system is. All right, so Josh, so you left the business for a little bit. How long were you gone, and where and when did you get back in?
Yeah. So, man, I started in insurance in 2009, left in 2012 for a full-time aviation gig again. And after about 6 years, realized, I'd grown up, I'd matured, had our first kid, and realized, I wanted to get back into the insurance industry and start controlling more of what I think I can control. Right. And devoting more to my own business rather than someone else's.
All right. So where'd you
go? So went back independent again. So I mentioned a good friend and colleague who, we had left Kansas Life to be independent agents. He had stuck it out and was in the insurance industry throughout the entire time that I was in aircraft. So I phoned him up and got back into the industry as an independent agent under his umbrella, if you will, or his agency. Again, back here in Wichita, Kansas. So did that for about 3 months. And then both that individual as well as myself were recruited by another LOA agency in Southern Oregon. And so that was, fall or late 2018. And I packed everything up and we moved out to Southern Oregon, Grants Pass, Oregon, to work for an insurance agency out there.
So this agency, though, this was a retail agency, if I remember right, correct?
Yeah, interesting concept. Not necessarily original concept. I mean, their business model exists all over the place, but it was new for me, right? I mean, I had never been in a retail insurance space at all. Didn't even realize that did exist.
Paint that picture real quick, because it's not abundant. I mean, I hadn't seen a lot of organizations like this. Paint that picture of how that organization looked.
Yeah, so it's essentially you're working in a retail space, big glass storefront windows, and 9 to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, and I don't know, I think it was maybe 10 to 5 or something like that on Saturdays. And you would rotate Saturdays and weekends and things like that. But but you're kind of I was switching the model of driving 1,000 miles a week as an independent agent, running appointments all over God's green earth, to sitting inside of a retail office space and just running as many appointments as I could.
But everything came to you, right?
That's right.
I mean, that's kind of the concept of those retail places. They supposedly spend some money on advertising. They pay a hefty lease payment so that when people are out shopping, they just walk in the door, right?
That's right. That's right.
And how long were you there?
For about a year and a half.
What did you think of that type of business model? Good or bad?
Well, I'll tell you, I got spoiled from the standpoint of having people come to me, right? Having people come to my office. That was really nice, not having to drive 1,000 miles a week. It was, additionally having to move from the Midwest, from Wichita, Kansas, to the West Coast or the Pacific Northwest was a huge eye opener for me, culturally, and just seeing a different kind of people there. So there's a lot of maturity, at least professionally or personally there as well. But the biggest difference with that retail type of storefront, I don't think it changed anything in the sense of that's why people were flocking there. The folks that I would still help and support, the clients I would help, it didn't change that they were looking for a knowledgeable insurance advisor, right? That's what they were really looking for. It just so happened they were doing that in a very expensive retail space, coming to a very expensive retail space to get that advising.
So you had a client or you had a prospect, they just walked through the door, they didn't know you, no relationship, and they would just come in and say, hey, I've got some questions maybe about my healthcare options. Is that what they were coming in for?
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I never really experienced much just, walk-in traffic during my tenure there, my year and a half there. Most of it was either current book of business. I was calling to start cross-selling, and that's kind of really where I started focusing on additional products. Or it was word-of-mouth referrals, getting those folks to come in. I mean, it was very, very sparse on any walk-in traffic. Maybe once a month is what I say I would experience of just someone happened to be in the area wanting to know about Medicare or, health insurance.
Okay, so you said cross-selling a second ago. So was this the first point in your career where you really started doing needs analysis or fact finders and trying to cross-sell for life, long-term care, and annuities? Or had you done that before?
I had done my fair share of packaging with Medicare supplements in the form of life insurance policies, right? You go save someone $150 a month, you throw a $50, $75, $100 a month life policy on there. But I had never really focused on Medicare Advantage, never focused on prescription drug plans, dental, vision, hearing, hospital indemnity plans, big or other types of more long-term care, life insurance policies, and annuities. So yes, to answer your question, that's really where I started to focus on the big picture of insurance and insurance advising was at that or with that agency.
All right. So I assume that leads us up to where we're at today of moving back to Kansas and starting Lokal Insurance.
Yeah.
Correct? Is that kind of where we're at now as present day?
It is. Yep. Yeah, exactly. So, at that or being an employee of that insurance agency, I was a salaried insurance agent with bonus potential, licensed only to the agency, never owned my book. And, at least in my opinion, I think a big reason why people get into the insurance industry is the ability for our residual income and to build and manage a book of business, not have to worry about, trying to constantly sell 10,000 new people every single year. So the biggest motivating factor for me was that ownership again. It was just it was the evolution, I guess, of myself as an agent, right?
Yeah, no, and that's so many people that if they're still listening to this podcast, they so resonate with that. There's, I mean, like 80 some percent of all the licensed life and health insurance agents out there, they are selling final expense or they're
Hmm.
selling Medicare. And a good percentage of those people are selling it for a captive company that they don't even
Yeah,
own the book of business. Or if they do, they've got to be there for 4 or 5 years before they're fully vested. And I agree wholeheartedly with what you just said. Like they're missing out on the best part about our industry, which is
for sure.
it should get easier as it goes on because those residuals should build up. You make $80,000 this year, you should make $80,000 or they're close. You might have some fallout the next year without doing anything. And so, and then couple that with the cross selling stuff. So many agents out there make a lot of money. They'll go run 50 appointments this month. They get online and social media and brag that, hey, I made $25,000 this month, but now it's June 1st and all of a sudden you got to go do it again. What have you done for me lately? Or
Exactly.
all of a sudden the bills don't get paid.
Yeah.
So talk to me about that for a second. Talk to me about the mindset of being an independent insurance agent and being an independent insurance business owner. Like where did that mind shift change for you?
Yeah, so I think as an independent agent, you're always working for someone else and what their vision is. And through my progression as professionally, I think becoming an owner is what captivated or what captivates me is making my own vision and setting my roots down and really growing something that I know I'm going to be in for the long haul, right? For the rest of my life, hopefully, God willing. So that's what I would say. Really, that piece is.
And that
Um,
changes the day-to-day stuff too, right? I mean, I
Absolutely.
remember when I first got into the business and I got lucky. I started like you. I went to work for a captive agency. And I went to work for him, and I got really lucky because I went to work for an individual that was super detail orientated. He had a marketing system of seminar marketing that was wired down to where the napkins go, let alone every word you're going to say on stage. The training program was we had a week in the boardroom and then 4 to 6 weeks in the field with the managers, seeing everything done. In 6 weeks we were a full blown agent selling everything.
Mhm. Yep.
Um, but I remember my mindset then was sales. It was all how many sales did I make this week? How much commissions did I make? And that's all I cared about.
Yep.
And after a year or so of that, it got to the point of me realizing I'm doing the same thing every month. It's starting over every month. And I don't know, I couldn't tell you a time that it clicked for me, but at some point, real soon after that, it clicked for me of I should be building a business that gets easier over time. And when I
That's right.
started that mindset change, I started doing things different. I
Hmm.
started really focusing on the quality of my fact finders and making sure that I'm doing those annual reviews so I can go back and pick business up down the road from past clients. I started making sure that, I was doing physical policy deliveries to build relationships and cross sell rather than just mailing it to them and never seeing them again, getting a CRM in place where I could punch in notes about potential future business. It just changes, right? That mindset of an agent versus an owner, it just evolves at some point.
Yep.
And it's all the difference in the world, thinking of it from a job versus a career standpoint.
Well, exactly. So I think you go from wearing one hat to your point where you're just solely focused on getting my next sale, right? To really trying to improve, your clients or your prospects' overall perspective of the industry and you as an individual and service them to their full needs. You're not just sitting there trying to sell a policy.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
All right, so let me set a question up for you. I did a video a while back that I broke down what I think are the two business models in this industry. Number one would be like a hierarchy business model where you're trying to recruit agents, whether locally or all over the country, that go and do their own thing and they come underneath you, so you collect a little override on them forever. Most of those times, those uplines aren't really offering a lot. They're kind of preying on ignorance because people don't know that they're a one man shop sometimes as opposed to an actual IMO. but they're going and doing their own thing. And their job is to manage those people, build up a whole bunch of them. And eventually, if you get a whole bunch of agents and keep a whole bunch of agents, you can really start collecting a good chunk of money from a little bit of an override on what they're selling. The other business model that I call is a staffing business model, where you're kind of operating like you're the man. And instead of hiring agents, you've got staff. You might have secretaries and processors and marketers. You might eventually have tax preparers. You might have a couple junior agents, but you're building an organization where you're the point person for it.
Mm-hmm.
I know that you and I have had this talk, but I wanted to set it up for the audience. What direction are you planning on building Lokal, and why?
So we are focused currently on becoming a staffing model. And really, I think some of that selfishly, right? Because I want to be the go-to guy. And additionally, I want to be able to control how we operate, the level of service that we provide. And if you've got 100, downline folks, or 50 or even 25, that can be really difficult, especially where you're working with different personalities. And they could be across different states. And so if they're utilizing your name, your business, it can very quickly go downhill if you have someone who's not operating at the level that you would expect them to. So with a staffing model, I think it more closely meets the needs of what me and my wife have in mind for our agency. And I think it makes it an easier prospect of growing the agency as well, efficiently and quickly.
I built the other kind. I did the downline model,
Mm-hmm.
and we did massive amounts of production. But what I realized after a few years was I wasn't in the insurance business anymore. I was in the recruiting and training business.
Yeah.
Because that's really, in the slash management. But I really think that the staffing model is staying in the business. It's really the insurance business, and everything is coupled around you to where ultimately, when you build a perfect staffing model, you're a rainmaker. You've got all these different marketing systems. So there's so many leads coming into you, and then you operate like a doctor almost, where it's every half hour, 45 minutes, you have a new qualified prospect in front of you. That's the
Mm-hmm.
that's the vision of a staffing model. I wish I would have done that. I mean, I did fine. I made some good money. But if you're a stud salesman and really good at your job, it's really hard to duplicate yourself. I think you're on the right path as far as picking that. But I think there's so many people listening and watching right now that they probably haven't even thought about this. They all want to do more business, make more money,
Yeah.
but the clearest way to do that is to really figure out what your business model is, so you can start making decisions and taking steps forward in that business model.
Absolutely. The other thing, Jeremy, what it boils down to is different strokes for different folks, right? You have to understand the type of person you are and maybe what excites you. And for some people, maybe that's the whole recruiting and hiring, wearing those hats, which can come along with a lot of headache and a lot of work. And I just know for us and our personalities and the way we're wanting to run business, that's not the way that works or is going to work, for our model. So
Well, that's good. I mean, you're figuring it out early. A lot of people go a lot of years before even asking that question, let alone deciding that question. Talk to me a little bit about how you guys market. How do you get in front of people?
So the good old days of buying leads and getting great returns, that's gone. At least in my opinion, those old mailer leads that I started with in 2009. A lot of what we're doing now is social media marketing, and trying to build a community and brand recognition behind that. Real grassroots marketing as well. So getting out into the community, visiting or doing home shows, doing the fairs, and various other. I mean, I've sat for hours at soup kitchens, food banks, things like that, right? To try and just either get the word out or to try and provide some help and relief to people. And so again, it really for us, I think what it is in an oversaturated market is trying to get the brand recognition, and it takes time. But that's what we're focused on now.
So you're saying social media is one of your outlets. Like, you've got you've got a YouTube channel. How long have you been doing your YouTube channel?
Couple months now.
Okay. And it's a consumer site, right? So you're putting content out for seniors.
That's correct. Yep. That's who it's really tailored for right now. I mean, down the road, we try and provide more education on that channel than asking for a sale. But yeah, sooner or later, we're trying to make it more well rounded. So it's not just tailored to the senior market, but we're going to discuss things like home and auto, business policies, and make a well rounded channel there.
Yeah, and I think that's good. I think that's the long game part of marketing these
Mm-hmm.
days is the social media route. And I think you do build a lot of your business during AAP. That's
That's
where you build
correct.
a lot of your clients.
Yeah,
Um, Obviously, one thing I guess we can kind of tell everybody, we just got done doing a client appreciation seminar.
we
Uh,
did.
so you take that and run. Explain to people real quickly what that means and how we went about doing that.
Yeah. So client appreciation seminars is phoning your clients up and inviting them to a seminar where, in this case, you came in and you spoke for about an hour on 4 different topics. And I think it's a chance to really help your clients, sit down, put the attention on you, your agency, how it operates, everything that you guys do, especially if you've been one that maybe you've only approached them for their Medicare needs, or maybe you've only approached them for their life insurance needs, right? And it can open the door for opportunities for maybe bigger life cases, for long term care and annuity opportunities, which is why we've done them. And Jeremy, I've worked with you on those since I think 2018. But they're a great tool to utilize for driving results to expand your product offerings to your clients that you already have.
Yeah, and from my standpoint, I think they're a great training tool.
Mm-hmm.
So when I work with new clients or agencies that are trying to evolve, I kind of use the same process of when I got into the business, and we'll teach the fundamentals of life, long-term care, annuities, how to run a sales process, do a fact finder, teach that on Zoom or in a boardroom setting. But then to really make everything click, they've got to see it real time. And so
Yeah.
the best way to do that is to say thank you to a bunch of your clients you got good relationships with, and then use that as a platform to say, hey, I do other things other than just health insurance. And
That's right.
so you go make $50,000 to $100,000 in a week in commissions, and oh, by the way, now you've really tied it all together to where you understand the process and how it all works. I want to make sure we talked about this today because I think there's so many people out there that see the light of knowing that the right thing to do is to evolve from a product salesperson into selling all of these products, but they don't have a good path to doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a client appreciation seminar, you know, telling them what the other things that your license allows you to do with a good script and good presentation will heat up appointments like no other marketing system there will. And you can make a lot of money doing it real quick. Uh,
Absolutely.
but I think it's a good marketing program, that people need to start adding to their repertoire, if you would. So let me ask you kind of a closing question here, Josh. Like I said, you're such an interesting test case because you've been in retail, independent, captive. You've been an agent for independent, what I would really call an agent and then an owner. If you could go back to the beginning, to your first company, when you were with Kansas Life and you're just getting your feet wet, and it probably felt good to have a company around you that you felt you had some structure and some people you could ask questions to for training and support. But if you could go back and talk to Josh at 23, what's the big aha, or the big thing you'd love to go back and tell that guy that might have changed, the trajectory of your career?
I mean, first and foremost, I would have said, hey, stick with it. Don't go back to aircraft, right? My gosh, if I would have had another 6 years already, I mean, I'd be in a much different boat. But jokes aside, I think the biggest thing that I would have probably told myself to focus on is getting some mentorship. getting, someone who can help with holding you accountable, um, and help your overall growth and strategizing for what you want your life to look like as an agent. Listen, there's a reason why 92% of insurance agents quit or fail. And oftentimes it's likely because of a lack of education or product knowledge and the product suite that they have to offer. Right. So having the ability to have that training, that mentorship early on, I think could not only have been a game changer for me, but it's a game changer for anyone who wants to take this industry serious. So.
Yeah, I got really lucky with that myself. I went to work for a captive agency, and I thought to myself at the end of that path, I got it. I'm going to go to the independent side, and I'm going to take the seminar marketing and all the culture and the hand holding and all of that stuff into the independent world, and I'm going to build this thing that doesn't exist. And I got over to the independent side, and I realized really quickly that I had nobody to call anymore to figure out how do I build a sales process or a script or a marketing system? What softwares do I need to use? What should my next step be? How do I recruit agents? All the things that you run through as a new business owner. And I got lucky, about a year into struggling with that, the owner of the agency I originally went to work for, who I was now as competition, mentored me, took me under his hand. And I spent the last 20 years talking with him every week, just as somebody to run stuff by. It would be my message to anybody out there too. It doesn't have to be some big time business coach, but find somebody that's been down the path that you're going and run your business by them. Get a second opinion on the direction you're going. Focus on building blocks of a career versus sales of a job. And I really think that'll catapult people and take that 92 and make that number a lot smaller as far as the people that can succeed in this business.
Absolutely. One more caveat to that is, and you kind of pointed it out, but when you start overall by yourself, insurance can be a very lonely world. And having access to a good mentor, good trainer, or colleagues in the industry that are going to help uplift you, in my opinion, it's a must if you really want to stick with it. Whether you want to be an agent or an agency owner, you need that.
It's the downside to starting your own company, is you're kind of on an island, and it's really important that real quickly you pick not only some people but the right people to build that company with, even if they're not, quote, an owner of the company.
That's right.
All right, Josh, I appreciate your time today, man. I love it. I wish you the best here in the future, and we'll look forward to talking to you down the road.
Sounds great. Thanks so much for having us on today.